Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, where we explore the journey of recovery from alcohol and drug addiction, one story, one conversation, and one step at a time. I'm your host, Joe, creating a safe space for honest discussions about the challenges and triumphs of addiction and alcoholism. In each episode, we'll hear inspiring stories and uncover tools that make healing possible. Sobriety is not a one-size-fits-all journey, and you don't have to face it alone. Recovery is possible, and it's worth it. Thank you for joining the Cup of Joe Show. Now let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm Joe, of course, your host, and I'm really excited to have my guest here today. I'll tell you a little bit about Dan, and then we'll have a great conversation. Dan's been sober since April 15th, 2022. He's an active member of the Early Bird Group in Noonan, Georgia, the 7:30 meeting, 7:30 a.m., and he proudly calls this the best meeting in town. I've heard that too, so I told him, I said, I've got to come there one day. At 59, Dan is navigating life and recovery with a full heart. He's a father to 4, a grandfather to 7, and he finds joy in the simple things. His favorite way to spend time, hanging out on the front porch with his beloved dog, Maggie. So, how you doing, Dan? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing well. Better than I think most days. Yeah. I was kind of nervous about doing this. You know how I know everybody starts out that way, and every fiber of my being says no, and then it's like I got to do it. You know?
And I'm so glad you did, and I'm excited to hear your story. And Dan brought his own cup of coffee, which I'm appreciative of. So grab your cup of coffee and settle in. And so tell me a little bit about, growing up, Dan. What was it like?
Let's see. It's funny. I think back now that I was really wouldn't say hillbilly, but a mountain boy. I grew up in the mountains, Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania. Close to the New York State border and Scranton and stuff. And, small bird called Halstead, Pennsylvania. And, it was great. It was, I had a great childhood. I really did. I had great parents. And I'm not just saying that because my mom will listen to it. They did. They give me everything I needed. And, always had good advice that I never followed or listened to. And, we camped during the summers, the whole summers. We camped the whole time, and we traveled and went and saw things, and they took us to museums, and we had great neighbors. It was just, fun, especially playing in the snow and stuff. And that was back when all the neighborhood kids get together and maybe cause a little bit of trouble, but usually just have fun. And it was a great time growing up.
That's a beautiful area too. That area of Pennsylvania. It's very similar to Tennessee, if I remember right. Very mountainous and.
Oh, you got to mention Tennessee, right?
I'm sorry, I had to do it because Dan's in Georgia, so I had to. That'll be a podcast for another day. So.
That's all right. I got to throw out my stuff from my Early Bird Group.
There you go. I hear you. I understand. So, do you have any siblings, Dan? Do you have any?
I do. I actually have a twin brother who's absolutely nothing like me, and I got an older brother, David, that we grew up being best friends. So we were always together.
Yeah.
You fought one of us, you fought all three of us. Yeah.
How about that? It's pretty cool. So,
it is. It's not quite such that way now, but we'll get into that later. But we always close, and then but how everybody talks about it, I was different, and growing up, and I don't know. For me, I don't know if it's the word different, because I may have been different, but it was out of place. seemed more appropriate. You know, even back then I can see now that, you know, I was driven on fear and emotion, you know. Yeah, I was a chameleon like, you know, I could get along with everybody and I was somewhat popular and you know, but you know, they'd asked me to be on like the captain of the hockey team and star in this play about George Washington. I don't know, in probably about 6th or 7th grade. And, you know, I just never could follow through on any of that. I'd find some excuse because of the fear and the pressure. And it just got so overwhelming. I never could handle any of that, any kind of pressure or anything. So, you know, I'd always try to find a way out, you know, and I never could face those fears. And I really didn't know how, even though, you know, I've been told to do that, or, you know, this is what a man does, or I should do this, or whatever. Is I just, you know, I could understand it or see it, but I could not know how to go deeper on it. You know, I couldn't really get a full understanding because, you know, it's like I need illustrations and pie charts to be able to do anything, you know. That's just, that's the kind of person I am. So without any kind of experience with overcoming any of that, I just didn't know what to do. I'm lost. I'm scared. And I'm driven on emotion and fear, and I just don't know what to do. So what do? I run away. I used to be good at that too. Even all of them through my, probably 30s or 40s. That's what I do. Just run away.
Just run. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, even when I was little, you know, one of my first memories is just running away. Something had happened and, you know, it was probably my fault. And I didn't want to face the consequences for it. So I ran, you know, ran through the woods. And, you know, that would continue for most of my life.
Yeah. Well, and we don't realize, you know, no matter where we run, there we are, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like recovery.
Yeah.
You know, there I am again, yet again, and in this situation, and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the scariest thing. That's what scares me.
Yeah.
And because insanity scares me, and we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
Because that's a huge part of my story.
Yeah.
But you know, so
how old were you when you took your first drink, Dan?
Well, let's put it this way. I had my first spiritual experience when I was 12 years old. I was at this campground up in Pennsylvania, which is in the mountains, and I was at an Irish Catholic wedding up there. And this is nothing about Irish or Catholic, but it's just that. And, you know, everybody was partying and stuff, and there's a keg over there, and of course, I'm drawn to it, and you know, and I end up drinking and getting drunk. Yeah, it was not only my first time drinking; it was my first time drunk. I started out a blackout drinker, and I remember. Well, I don't remember. They told me that we were down at the beach, the lake, and I started to pass out. And when I was falling backwards, I grabbed for something, and it happened to be one of the bridesmaids' dress, and I ripped it off. And yeah, that's one way to do it your first time.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I don't do anything halfway, you know. And then it's this classic. I woke up in the morning and I'm still on the beach, and, you know, there's throw up all around me and stuff. And, you know, I woke up and of course it was the worst feeling I'd ever had, you know, my first hangover and stuff. And then I remember my second thought being, man, I want more. You know, I don't know about other people, but I can clearly see now this obsession This obsession was immediate for me. And, I was seeking getting drunk since I was 12 years old. And the whole logistics and trying to get drunk and get people to buy a 12-year-old alcohol is hard. But, if you look hard enough and you try hard enough, you can find people.
Yeah.
And, being in Pennsylvania, the drinking age was 21. But we were like 3 miles from the New York State border. And I had friends I knew people who were 18, and that was the drinking age in New York. And if you annoy somebody enough, and you're yapping at their heels long enough, and you bother them enough, they'll go buy it for you just to shut you up.
Yeah.
And that's what I did.
We find a way, don't we? We find a way.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'd have pursued truths in life and all the good stuff half as much as I did that, then, I'd be more successful than I am now.
Yeah. What was high school like? Did it continue?
I'll go back to this because it's important. Yeah. We moved from, my father got a job down here in Georgia, so we moved down to Georgia. And when I was in 8th grade, but by the time I'd gotten to high school, I was an overachiever in high school, not academically. For many years, I held the school record for suspensions in a year and demerits. Most people don't know what they are, but demerits in a day.
Yeah.
And, I was somewhat proud of that. And, that's pretty much the way my high school went. These people just wouldn't leave me alone. If they just leave me alone and let me do what I want to do, let me just party and have fun.
Yeah.
I wasn't opposed to all this other stuff, but, a lot of the stuff they wanted me to do, just as long as it didn't interfere with my schedule. And, sometimes school was too early in the morning, and, sometimes I just didn't feel like going. And so, I became one of those usual suspects, and I did go after a teacher with a baseball bat one time, but, I can see clearly now they probably didn't deserve it at the time, but I did do some crazy stuff. He should not have given me that F, though. He did change my grade to an A, though. He was wrong and I was right. You don't always have to be right, but sometimes, So
I'm surprised he didn't change it to B for bat. I'm just saying that would have been.
It was. Yeah, I found out from my homeroom teacher that, how they're not supposed to talk in the teacher's lounge.
Right.
You're not supposed to talk about students. She said they talked about me all the time, and they called me the junkyard dog. And, but of course she was drunk at the time when she told me. She was a homeroom teacher. Yeah, she was about 3 sheets to the wind at the time when she told me. But, I had.
How that made you feel, Dan? I was just thinking, like I wonder, how did that make you feel? Being, do you remember anything like that about?
Sound like my therapist.
I know. I didn't mean. I don't. And I'm not a therapist. I just it hit me that way. Like
it does. It matters. It matters, and probably more is what I was thinking at the time. How my emotions being driven on emotions and stuff. Yeah. I just really the best I can remember is just feeling like leave me alone. And they kept telling me, you can do better. You're smart, and look at your twin brother. He's in all these advanced classes and stuff. And it's just not what I wanted. It was not conducive to getting drunk and partying. And if they would just leave me alone, or if they just, they just don't understand. I was misunderstood, and there wasn't really a whole lot of anger. I wasn't angry at them. I wasn't trying to be real defiant, although, like we are, don't tell me what to do.
Right.
Kind of thing. But, as far as this visceral anger at them, and it never, most of the time when I got in trouble, I knew it was my fault. There was no blame anybody else. It's just, and I guess I had had several classes to where I would go in and, I'd go and lay my head down and they'd sleep. And so I was, hey, Dan, get up. And the teacher would be like, no, don't wake them up. Don't wake them up. We don't want Dan, because I don't really want to say there's anything bad about schools down here. But when I went in Pennsylvania, they were at the time the third highest ranked school system in the country. And I had learned everything through 8th grade to just about get me through high school here. So
it's different.
I didn't really have to apply. I didn't have to apply myself, so I didn't, of course I regret it now. And, but I did graduate. I made it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, I met my first girlfriend there. I don't know what's wrong with these women in my life. They actively go out and seek me. I don't know. Maybe we're not all sick, just us sick. But And after 2 years, she cheated on me. And I remember catching her, and then I did all these emotions. I could not get past that. I started obsessing about it, and the more I tried not to think about it, the worse it got. The more drugs and alcohol I went to, and that just wouldn't, temporarily get rid of the pain, and I'm just suffering, and here comes my first solutions. 12 years old, drinking to change the way I feel. So I'm lost, and I emotionally just destroyed and crushed with nowhere to go. And the police were kind of upset at me at the time, and school was upset with me. My girlfriend broke up with me. So my parents are going out of town for the weekend, and I get this idea, to end it. So here comes my second solution, because my first one's not working. So I'll go to this new solution of just checking out. And so I fill the bathtub upstairs, filled it up with water, and slit my wrist. And for some reason that my parents had left something at the house, and they came back about 30, 45 minutes later. I don't know how much time it was, but they knew something was wrong, and my dad had to kick down the door, and they found me. And, I survived that.
Yeah.
And, I can remember thinking afterwards that, my first reaction is, damn it, now I got to live with this stuff. All the stuff's still there.
Yeah.
And I can remember, I couldn't put the two things together. I couldn't put this whole spiritual thing in there, this higher power, this God in there. Here I'm thinking that, I didn't die because I was doing stumble biscuits and my heart wasn't beating fast enough. So, Quaalude saved my life. That's kind of warped thinking for most people, but it seemed reasonable to me. And that began my first stint. It was my junior year. I was 17. My first stint in the nut house. Or behavioral institution, is a nice way to put it. Sure. It was one of those / drug alcohol rehab thing. And this is back in, early 80s and stuff. And I spent 3-4 months in there. And, they diagnosed me as manic depressive, which is called bipolar. And so they diagnosed me bipolar before it became popular and stuff, and like it is now. And yeah, and I didn't really think much of it then, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what the hell that was, and you know, just wanted to get out of there and have fun. And so I got out of there and stayed sober for about a month, and then my birthday came up, and then I asked my mother and father if I could go out and party with my brothers on my birthday. Well, not party, I'd say party, but that was my intention. You know, to go out and have fun with my brothers. And they said yes, and I went out, and I didn't go home for 8 months. Yet again, I'm running away from my problems. You know, I did a little couch surfing, but mostly I lived with my brother, my older brother, who had an apartment, and you know, it was bad. Yeah. You know, I had my first job, and you know, but I'd be up all night doing drugs and drinking, and go to bed at 3, get up at 6 to go to work. Continuous cycle. I worked in this die cast, what they call die cast apartment, 120 degrees out in the summertime, sweating alcohol out of me all day long, swear up and down, not going to the bar again. Because what the nice part about it, there was a bar a quarter mile down the road, and they let us run past. Yeah. And I'm sorry, the dog's laying where the bone.
It's Maggie. And, okay.
Maggie's playing.
Yeah.
And every morning, this lady would, she'd greet me with a cup of coffee, a biscuit, and a goodies powder. And that's how I'd start my morning every morning. And this went on for, I don't know, 7-8 months and stuff, until I said, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it. Something just hit me that's, you know, I got nothing. I don't have a car. I got to have clothes. I got to get back to school. And so I called mom and dad up, and I said, hey, man, can I come back? And yeah. You know, they allowed me to come back home. And, you know, and in my first day of school, my senior year, well, it was my first day. It was everybody else's 6th week, something like that. I get you know, it. I walk in there, and I got cut off blue jeans and a concert T-shirt with seed burns in it, and I was probably a little bit high at the time. And I walked in there, and the assistant principal threw me out, and I mean, just instantly. And so I had to work to get back into school, and I did, and I only got suspended one time my senior year, and that was for something I truly didn't do, and it was only because I was the usual suspect. Right. And, you know, and then, oh my God, I'm looking at graduation. You know, and I got people coming, oh my God, Dan's graduating. They're coming from Pennsylvania, Florida, North Carolina, and I may even know some people in Tennessee. I don't know. Yeah. And, you know, and then I graduated, and I don't know why they made a big deal out of it. I always thought I'd graduate. They just were totally inspired by it. And, you know, I think I graduated 463rd out of 465 or 68. You know, that was one of the questions at the 20-year reunion. You know, how many was really? Graduate class? I said 468, and they said, "How'd you know that?" And I said, "Because I was 463rd." That's how I remember.
Held on to the trivia.
So, you know, that was high school. Yeah. You know, but you know, I look on it now, and you know, I had fun. I did. Yeah. I did have fun, and it was yeah. And you know, my children, my oldest children, I got them from 38 to 18. My 2 oldest, they, you know, their last name's Ryder, same as mine, from anonymity, but
Right.
They had a little bit of trouble with that because, you're Dan Ryder's,
Yeah.
you're Dan's son and stuff like that. But, they did well, man. I got some good kids.
That's pretty
Proud
awesome
of them.
right there.
Yeah, it is.
That's a testament to how your life turned out. I think our kids are our legacy. They really are. What'd you do after high school?
Partied.
I should.
Yeah.
That was a loaded question, apparently.
Duh, I drank. No, I mean, I worked and had partied a little bit, and just went about life. And then I met my future ex-wife about 2 years after that. I think I was 21. I met her. Was married at 22. And don't get me wrong. I hate saying ex-wife because ex gives it, this negative connotations.
Yeah.
And she's a wonderful person.
Yeah.
And I'll say this: the mother of two of my children.
There you go.
And she's a good person. And I got married at 22, father at 23, homeowner at 24. Holding down a job. Not only that, excelling at it. Life was pretty good. And, except for those times where I miscalculate how much I drank or how much drugs I did.
Yeah.
It would happen every once in a while. And, I never really thought much of it. It's just really all that stuff that comes with the DUIs and stuff. To me, it's just consequences. These are just known consequences. I knew if I 1,000 times that I drink and drive, that eventually there's going to be that one time where they finally get me.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Hold on. Technical problem. Let's do this. Okay. Sorry, battery ran down real quick on me.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, we were married 17 years, and then we end up in this big house. I hate saying that. Oh, we had all this, but no, we had a nice house and we had everything we needed. And then one day she just walks up to me and says, she gave me an ultimatum for I don't know, she'd given me ultimatums before, and she told me I had 6 months to quit drinking.
Yeah.
Or she was going to divorce me. And I'm like, yeah, right. Yet again, here we go again with this ultimatum. And apparently this time she was serious. And I don't even think she waited 6 months. I think she waited 3 months.
Yeah.
And just couldn't take it anymore. I really did some rotten things, and so, I didn't want to be that bar fly, right? I didn't want to be the guy sitting at the end of the bar, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't want to be that guy getting DUI. I didn't want to be all this stuff. And, I kept setting the bar lower and lower and lower. And so here I am going to, I'm working, and my kids are in like elementary school, and they're having to go to after school care because dad is supposedly working overtime, but he's actually at the bar drinking. So he can get a couple hours in drinking. So they're having to sit a couple hours after school to, and then I'm picking my children up afterwards and driving not only my children, but my neighbors' children too sometimes. And, when I look back at it, we had a lot of great times, but there were some really bad things I did. And, and she knew, I knew these are things I didn't really even try to hide. and it's amazing those two turned out the way they did. My oldest kids all my kids are wonderful. Those two, I tried to make amends and later on, and they said they really, because I was a fun dad.
Yeah.
I wasn't mean or cruel to them. I always, they didn't really always see me drunk, so yeah. And then, well, let's go back to my first DUI because I got a pretty good story about this one. My wife sent me up to this hockey game to meet her sister's new boyfriend and all their friends, and I was kind of forced into doing that, and that's probably why I blamed her because I got a DUI. But so we're up there enjoying the hockey game, and I parked my car at Varsity, which you probably heard of Varsity. It's famous. Okay. Yeah. So I go to the hockey game, and then these guys pressure me into taking them to strip clubs because I don't want to go to those places, and so I take them around and stuff, and then I finally, about 3-4 in the morning, they get me back to the Varsity to my car, and I'm lost. I don't know how to get home. So I leave the Varsity, and I'm just going down the road, and I finally see this stadium. And I said, I know exactly where I got to go. All I got to do is cross this bridge. So I'm so excited about that. I don't wait for the light to change. I just sort of run the red light and bootleg it around the corner, and I come up over the bridge, and there's this roadblock, and the cops are there. I mean, they're just laughing and stuff. I mean, I'm like, so I stop, and they asking for my license and insurance. And I said, do we really have to do this? I'm drunk, and all this. And they made me do the pen sobriety test where you can't move your head and stuff. And then, all right, in the back, and I got in the back of the car, and, it was a pretty good night because the Georgia State Patrol guy said I was the nicest guy he ever arrested for DUI. So, isn't that cool?
You're a nice man. They're a nice man.
And then they took me to Atlanta Fulton pretrial, which is a really bad place. And then, so that was my adventure getting my first DUI. I earned it. Yeah. First out of two. First out of two, which were I don't even think a year apart. And, so.
What were some of go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Did you end up? I'm guessing. Did you get remarried? Did I hear that?
We're not there.
Okay, that's what I was wondering if we were there. I said.
Oh no, I never did get remarried, but I did meet somebody else.
Okay.
We lived together for a long time, and that's. But so after the divorce, I went into what I call the dark ages.
Yeah.
And this was, it was bad. My older brother, who really ended up saving my life over this, I was living in his basement after that, and I'm going to work full time, and I'm going to school at night full time, and I'm drunk, and I'm introduced to Klonopin, and kind of like the way the bubbles from the beer felt on the back of my throat, and which really it was just totally insane. Unbelievable.
It was dark. Yeah.
Yeah, I call it the dark ages, but it was definitely, I was a shell of a human being. The exact person I never, ever wanted to be.
Yeah.
I was good to nobody. And I went from the place I worked at, I went from the best employee they had to the worst. And then here comes, I was saying there's, this woman came up and said, "Hey, I want that."
Yeah.
That's just what I want. This shell of a human being. And
Yeah.
I met her, and we worked together, and ended up having a son together. And I now raised her daughter since she was 1 year old. But at that period, the first year that I got that divorce, I ended up in institutions 8 times that year. So I guess that was like, 9 in total at that point, and I think it was 2004. And because I don't know it, and then several of those times were 1013, which in this state it's your ward of the state. You're homicidal or suicidal, and starting to have auditory and visual hallucinations, and which were real scary. And especially when those little baby bunny rabbits were attacking me that night and were going to kill me. I don't remember again. That's what people told me. And, I remember one of the first ones that I had was I was sitting on the back porch at this house, and it's 4 a.m, and this naked man come running through my backyard. And then his dog come running behind him. And I'm like, okay, was that real?
Yeah.
Probably wasn't. I probably need to go check. I went and looked on the side of the house, and of course it wasn't real. So, this is part of my story. And this is where I start going in and out of institutions. I've been locked up 26 times. I'm a 16-time alumni at Peachford alone. So, but what that gives me, it gives me a connection with some of these people who've gone through the same thing I have.
Absolutely.
It's not a fun time, straight jackets, rubber rooms, serious electric shock treatment, the whole 9 yards, and these antipsychotics and all this stuff. And, it's a hard time. And, and I couldn't see that there's a correlation between this too, with the drugs and alcohol and these psych meds and going to the hospital. And, half the time with this dual diagnosis, I didn't know if I was there because I was crazy or because I was a drunk.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't see. I couldn't see a way out, and I couldn't see what was really going on. And when I'd get right, I'd be on the right kind of medications and stuff. And I was trying to stay sober at the time, and I'd start feeling better and just stop taking them.
Yeah.
But, about 18 years ago, I started this journey because I, of course, having DUIs, going to the nut house when I was 17. I was introduced to AA, and, the courts sent me there, the wives, all that stuff. I'd gone to it and just really didn't want my kind of thing. And then I'd gotten out of the institution yet again, and I was just driving around. And I remember I was going to like Walmart or something just to get something, and my car pulls into this noon meeting, and I went in there and I sat down and I listened, and what came to my mind is where it says in the big book in the beginning, where we recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm not there, and I say this quite a lot to people, is I'm not in this 12-step program in AA because I'm scared of alcohol. I'm scared of insanity because I've been there and I know what happens and I know how it is in this, but see, I go there and I just latch onto this group, and I'm work the steps and I get relief from that. And, I'm feeling pretty good. But yet I still have this, what I call this punk rocker and acid, in my constantly, blah, 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 blah. I'm sober, but I'm totally still insane.
Yeah.
And I'm still driven on fear and emotion. My thinking's still skewed but yet at the same time, I'm sponsoring people and my sponsees are sponsoring people and things are okay. But, and I always hated this part where it says we rest on our laurels.
Mm-hmm.
And I still hate to think that I did. But that's exactly what I can't describe it as any other way.
Yeah. How long were you sober at this time, Dan? Like, how long were you not drinking or at this point?
Well, okay. I had several year chips. I could go a year or something, and then I'd fall off and go back and, get another year and stuff. But this time I went back in. When I pulled into that, I was sober 5 days short of 7 years.
Okay.
And going to meetings, I think I went to all but 26 meetings in 2,000 days. And, as things were okay, but it was just, I was still way out there. It was suggested by a lot of my friends that, well, why don't you try reading this or this? And, no, I got it, man. I'm okay. And, but yet I'm still sitting on my front porch. And at this point I'd become unemployable. I can't work because I'm in and out of institutions and everything. And I just can't work. And so I'm sitting on my front porch after meetings and my mind's just racing and stuff. I can't get off that porch. I cannot. I'm debilitated because of my thinking and my mind and the way it works and everything that's going on. It's just total insanity but I don't know anything else.
Yeah.
I've never had any moments of sanity and clarity. And if they were very brief. And for me, so I'm 5 days short of 7 years, and my youngest boy, he's running away. I don't know where he gets that from, but he's running away. And
the apple, yeah. Dan. Yeah.
And I already know there's something wrong with this kid because he drank one time. He gets drunk one time and he wakes up the next day and he says, I don't like it. I never want to do it again. So there's already something wrong with this kid. And so he's running away. And my girlfriend asked me that his mother asked me, said, what are you going to do? And I said, I either want to kick his ass or I want to call the police, but that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to give him to God. Which was very, it's not just, okay, instantly, it's a process. Right. And the person he's come out to be just totally astounds me. He blows me away day after day after day. And, but yet, before I don't know, let's go back to okay. I can't do things sequentially because I've
You're
lost long periods of time in my life. I'm like Keith Richards. I got decades and decades of just gone. Yeah, we went through that today, and
you're like a Rolling Stone. All right, I had to do it.
Yeah, and yeah, that was a major problem today, as a matter of fact. But a year, I think it was a year before that, that was 5 days short of 7 years. So here I am. He's running away that day, and that's the difference between a year. And I don't have anything. See, what I did have, this connection to power that I had lost, unbeknownst to me, because I'm trying to convince myself,
right.
I'm okay. I got these resentments and I've got this other stuff going on and the wheels are falling out, but I've got it. I've got this. And the book talks about this suddenly. And then suddenly this idea came to my mind. It'd be good that, let's just get drunk. That's my first solution. My old behaviors came back because I had no defense. I didn't have the big guy on my side. And then just 2 weeks earlier, I had pulled up to the beer store. They say it's a convenience store, but I used to call it a beer store. And I wanted to go in and buy something to drink. I wanted to get some beer and I wanted to get drunk. And, I prayed about it and I called a friend and I didn't go in. But this time I'm like, look, I'm not doing any of that shit. I am going in there and I'm not even going to think, because that suddenly came. I'm not even going to think. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to grab it and I'm going to run right out. And I did. And, I drank. I drank. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I went over to my son's house. He's having a big party. My whole family's there. And, and I'm drinking and some of them are saying, oh my ex-wife came up to me and said, oh, it's okay. She was real supportive and stuff. And I'm just like, leave me alone. And, but there's some people come, oh, I'm glad you're drinking again and stuff. And, you're so boring when you're sober. And, and in my mind, I'm thinking, this is not what I want.
Yeah.
It's not what I want. But I'm not punishing myself about it, and then I woke up the next morning, and for the first time in my life, I had total clarity. And I mean, that punk rocker on ass is gone, and I knew what I had to do. I mean, it still floors me to this day that, almost 3 years later, that it could be that powerful.
Yeah.
And, I knew what I had to do. So I had to walk 4 miles to get my car because they wouldn't let me drink and drive. And I drove to the early bird meeting. And see, I was still going to meetings at the time.
Yeah.
To me, it didn't matter how many meetings I went to. It's about this connection. If I'm not hooked up to this power, I'm not doing good. I'm trying to manage my own life. I'm white knuckling or whatever. But after that morning, the series of events that happened to me that occurred back to back to back after this spiritual 2x4 was what I call it, because that's what, that's what Dan needs. And that's what a lot of us need, right?
Yeah.
We need to be in enough pain before we're going to get off our ass and do anything.
Yeah.
And, I know that to be true about myself. And, how long am I going to wallow in that pain? And I don't near as much as I used to. But so we go down to this, about 2 months later, go down to this wall weekend down in St. Simon Island. And we're down there and there's a group of us, a group of my buds, including Rusty. You had Rusty on not too long ago.
Yeah.
It's his fault I'm on this tonight. And, yeah. If I don't do well, I'm going to kick him in the teeth tomorrow. Spiritually. spiritually. And,
Oh, good.
So I'm in the parking lot talking to this kid down there and about how I made a choice to go drink,
Yeah.
And how it was my choice. I chose this, I chose to do that. And then we were out having a cigarette break and we went back to start the new session. And we started it always with the set aside prayer, which I now call
prayer.
I do it every morning, but yeah, I had to do it Dan's way. Dan calls it the I don't know shit prayer.
Yeah.
And which really helps me. And so we do that, and then they said, raise your hand if you drank and you've been back out, you relapsed in the last 6 months. And of course, I raised my hand. And then the very next question, of course, is what? If you think you had a choice that you chose to drink, raise your hand. And I got about halfway up, and I'm like, damn. That then it occurred to me, there was no choice. And then, I got to listen to these guys, and then I walked up to a friend of mine, and I said, "Hey, will you do a 4-step with me?" And he said, "No, Dan, let me make it easy on you. I'll sponsor you, and I'll take you through all the steps again."
Hey, there you go.
Yeah. So, I started working them again, and with this new lens, this new filter I have of this set aside prayer. What really appealed to me was not just the part that I don't know nothing, because I was at that point. Everything I thought I knew got me to where I was at that point, which was nowhere. And it was to open my mind and have a new experience. Okay. This is where it started with everything I have is my experience. Right.
Yep.
I'm usually good at, I don't give advice. I'm usually good at telling people my experience of what not to do. Here's where Dan went wrong. So I'd had this experience where I woke up that next morning with clarity the first time in my life. So I get that. So I have that experience, and I want more.
Yeah.
I like this.
Yeah.
And so this is like true freedom and from self. And then, so I had this experience at St. Simon's, and then I have this experience of redoing the steps, and getting past this prejudice that I had, this visceral hatred for organized religion. And, how that formed, I don't know. I think it was my idea of man's interpretation or whatever. It really doesn't matter. But anytime, when we agnostics, when like page 45, when they go from the physical, the allergy of it, and they start going into the spiritual side of it, I'm thinking the first time through, I've been hoodwinked. Hoodwinked. Here we go. This is no different than the preachers that always come up. I'd go to bars, and the preacher would always come sit next to me. Yeah, it was weird, man. Maybe that was a signal from God. I don't know, but
is it odd or is it God?
Yeah, and here we are again. I'd already worked the steps without applying this whole thing, because I'm shut down. As soon as you mention anything spiritual, anything God, I relate it back to religion, and I'm shut down.
Yeah.
And so this time around, he does it a little different. No, I'm more open-minded to it.
Yeah.
So I'm receptive. If I'm open-minded to it, I'm receptive. I can hear it. And not only can hear it, I can put it into experience. So this is another part of my journey, this new journey of mine, where I'm having these experiences. And then we went to this monastery in Alabama for a weekend. And there was a lot of good speakers up there. Katie Parker was there, and she said some things that just blew me away. And, so I learned some more. I had this new experience, and then I met some new people, and they shared their stuff with me. And then I started going to all these conventions and things, and, just this experience. And then my sponsor told me, he recommended some books to me. Why don't you read Four Agreements? So I went and I bought it. And again, I need the illustrations. I knew exactly. I need clear cut direction before I could do anything. So I'm reading this on a Sunday night. I think I started at like 4 a.m. and, I'm reading it and the sun's coming up and, and I'm just blown away, because it's giving me, not only what I should do, but here's how to do it.
Yeah.
So I started following that. So, well, this sounds pretty solid stuff. And so I started practicing these things, and wow, this is pretty cool. So I'm getting more of that freedom. So I'm becoming this freedom junkie.
Yeah.
I'm no longer obsessing about alcohol and, or drugs or anything else. I got this new solution and this new freedom, and I'm just hungry for it.
Yeah.
Hungry. I want more and more and more. And then I don't know when they put this in the big book, but it talks about growing spiritually, and it talks about growing in effectiveness and understanding. Mm-hmm. It's like that whole chapter into action. I don't know when they put that whole chapter in there. I think it was sometime a couple of years back, but it was way after I did the steps the first time. And there's a lot of that stuff,
Yeah.
they added later that I didn't get the first couple times around. Yeah. And, but due to these things that I've done, the sequence of events, and it all starts coming together. And I meet now with, I met Stoller.
Yeah.
And he's quite a unique individual. I love him. Don't tell him, because don't want to give him a big head. We'll keep it our secret. And we meet. He mentioned to me, I asked him to be my sponsor, and he mentioned to me there's 3 books for I want us to go through, because I recently just redone the steps, and he said 2 books. I don't even remember the name of it, but he mentioned Sermon of the Mount, and I'm like, no freaking way. No way. No way. And I remember I'm on my way home, and I said, if I'm so against it, that's really what I need to do. And it's really opened my mind up. So this is just something added to it. So now I have, and I believe this, everything's in the big book, but to me, it just scratches the surface. It's only 164 pages, and it just scratches the surface, and it tells you continually that you're supposed to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And so I get this greater understanding of, oh yeah. And then whenever I think I know, oh yeah, I know that. And then it's like, oh yeah, it's, it's even deeper than that. And I've learned so much, and it's so cool. Yeah. It's a hell of a way to live. And, I'm continuously blown away. People ask me all the time, and how you doing? I said, I'm doing well, and I like to say, life is great and it can't get no better. But every time I say that, it does.
Yeah.
And it's a hell of a way to live your life at this new design of living, because back when I was sober for 7 years, that, I wasn't really happy about it.
Yeah.
I did not. People were telling me, you were so much more fun when you were drinking. It's because I didn't know how to have fun, because I'm just sitting there. It's like, my God, I wasn't thinking about drinking, but I was trying to convince myself that, oh, I'm having fun, or how do I do that? Or, because I don't know anybody. I don't know how to have fun without alcohol and drugs.
Yeah.
And, I learned that I can have a better time, which I used to think was just, these lies they're trying to feed me again.
Well, you have certainly.
These people are pretending,
Yeah. They're not real.
Yeah, they're lying their teeth off. They're on the back, they're in the kitchen, taking little nips back there, and they're all full of it. And
nobody can be this happy sober. I used to always think
no
that.
way. Yeah. Or if they are, I want that little, they hadn't taught me the little secret handshake yet or anything, or they're not giving me everything I need. And
well, when you learn the secret handshake, teach me, Daniel. I appreciate it.
I'd have forgot it by now anyway, but it's I've met a group of people that are so awesome. To drop anything to come help me. And
it's a blessing, brother.
It is. And like I say, with my children, what through my sobriety and through my beliefs, my trust in God, the way they're turning out is unbelievable.
Pretty awesome.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Listen, I appreciate you sharing your story with me, and I can't let you
We're
go.
Done already?
We're not done yet because we have to do our
I got more
questions.
I got. Oh no. No, not these.
Oh yeah, it's time.
All right.
And but it means a lot to me what you shared, and a lot of experience, strength, and hope in there, Dan. And so thank you so much. But here we go, rapid fire.
All right.
What is your favorite recovery slogan?
None.
That'll be easy then.
We'll have to go back to that. Oh, I got a story about that. Can we do our worst?
You can do. Well, that's the next question, so you can do it. What is your least favorite recovery slogan?
Take what you like and leave the rest.
Okay. What do you think is your sobriety superpower?
God.
If you could say one thing to your former self, what would it be?
Stop.
What song do you play to lift your spirits when you need a boost?
Oh, I can't think of it. Rolling Stones. It just happened. Start it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could grant yourself one wish to help with your recovery, what would it be?
I don't know. That's a tough one. I don't wish for anything.
That's pretty cool.
I mean, it's kind of a, cop out answer, but no, I can't think of anything that I'd wish for different or I need to be where I'm at now. So
it's fair enough. What step do you love the most?
10th.
What step do you love the least?
2nd.
What is your favorite curse word?
What's that? I missed the.
What is your favorite curse word?
Fuck. Isn't everybody?
Well,
I mean, is it that? Okay.
I like that one in all its forms. I'm just saying.
Okay. All right.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Okay, you kind of cut out on me in the beginning of that.
I didn't hear the Okay. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
It's about time.
I like that. Dan, I really appreciate you coming on today, sharing your story. I need to remind everybody a new episode is released every Thursday at noon. You can listen to the show on your favorite podcasts, Amazon Audio, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, and others. Just search for The Cup of Joe Show. Don't forget the. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for joining us, Dan. I really appreciate you, my friend.
Thanks for
it was great
having me.
to hear
Really,
your
I had a
story.
good time.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Until next time.
Yes.
It's just a laid-back vibe, baby.
We hope you enjoyed today's experience, strength, and hope. We are so grateful you decided to join us. Please share this episode with someone who might need it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, no matter where you are in your recovery journey, you are not alone. Reach up and reach out to someone. Please do not suffer in silence. Until next time, let's take it 1 minute, 1 hour, and 1 day at a time. Thanks for listening to The Cup of Joe Show.